have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away to go. Leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you never run before.
Hello everybody, good evening. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. I am Cammy Black. We are going to try and be positive tonight. I hope. We shall see how that goes. Anyway, I'm joined this evening by John Anderson. Good evening, John.
Good evening.
And Iain here. Iain's back by popular demand.
Doogie is very popular, so
What's
thanks
with
to
the cap, Iain?
the lighting around here is a nightmare.
What?
My lamp situation is not good. They're
What,
not
you
very.
need to be able to see or
Do
something?
we need to spend some Patreon money on a nice bit of lighting for you, Iain?
Possibly, yeah. Just a wee
One of
desk
those
lamp.
big ring lamps that you could just have up above his premium camera that he's got going here.
Like a halo.
Yeah.
This is a crappy camera. This is the inbuilt one. It's like,
We makeup kit as well, just to take the shine off the cheeks. And
That's it, yeah.
Oh no,
See,
that's
it was-
just my natural glorious glow.
He was all right when he was using Zoom. He was all right because he had the touch up my appearance function. I did a wee bit of vampire glow to him.
yeah. Anyway, thank you for joining us.
Did you see the one comment on the the Dan Leon interview was on YouTube? There's like one
Yes.
comment on it, and it's just someone saying, "Here, mate, you need to sort your lighting out because it looks like the light emanates out of your face." Because I'm sitting at the desk is at the bay window, and light just comes in, and then because it's a crappy camera, I can't differentiate between natural light and artificial light. So it's...
And also Iain's a vampire, as we all know.
There's that as well, yeah. I haven't been outside much at all in
No, nobody has.
30 years.
Anyway, hello to everybody who's watching us live. We're on YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch as well. We've got Funko Philly, regular listener to the watch. Good. It says, "Gentlemen, how are we? We are very well, Phil." Phil also left us a lovely review on iTunes, so thank you very much, Phil. He says, "As a Welsh, fantastic, insightful, brilliant, as a Welsh rugby fan." So I don't know. I think Phil might be tuning in for different reasons tonight. He might be trying to get a different kind of enjoyment out of this evening.
Oh, we might leave a 1-star review after tonight.
We've also had a wonderful review from Adrian 1971, who said, "Cammy and John offer really thoughtful and amusing analysis and insight into Scottish rugby. They're quite long podcasts, so I listen at 1.5 speed, which means they sound drunk when you revert to normal speed." That said, I'm pretty sure they were actually drunk when comparing Johnny Gray's tackle state rate to effectiveness of different forms of contraception.
Stone cold sober. Stone cold sober when we done that.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Anybody who leaves us a review on Apple, if you leave us a good one, we will read them out. You don't forget you can sign up for our Patreon as well if you go to patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast. For £3 a month, you can get access to ad-free versions of the podcast. If you don't like the long versions of the rambling versions we do, I do an edited version where I cut out all the stuff at the start where we ramble on and talk about caps, and Iain being a vampire. And just focus on the rugby. It comes up about 40 minutes, and the normal podcast is about an hour and 45. So
It's mainly stuff I'm not in that gets cut out.
that's it. I just go through and I've got a
Sorry,
wee
but
thing that pulls
cut
it.
out all my stuff. Yeah.
So yes, so you can also get those the little mini pods as well for £3 a month if you want those. Plus
I'm
exclusive
a human
content as well.
vuvuzela.
A human vuvuzela. Is that something you just wanted to share with the group, Iain, or is that on a review somewhere?
No, it's just that you can shut me up if you want. Carry on. Sorry, I'm just trying.
just rambling utter nonsense.
This is the stuff I've got to go and cut this out, Iain. I do have to do work after this, you know.
So it's just proving my point.
Anyway,
Continue.
we should also say we are brought to you in paid partnership with Manscaped, who are the best in male grooming products. So if you go to manscaped.com/Scottish Rugby, you can get 20% off plus free shipping on any of their products. So they do aftershave and they do ball deodorant, which smell exactly the same. So if you want a consistent smell throughout your body, then that's the way to go. You can get trimmers for your intimate parts. You can get nose trimmers. Just because we're on lockdown and we're not seeing people doesn't mean that we can't make ourselves presentable for our loved ones indoors, or even the loved ones you may be sharing a romantic evening with over Zoom. Do you know? The filters don't cover everything, do they, John, on Zoom? I don't know. I'm not directing that to you. For
I know
that's
that's a very bold. I mean, the touch up my appearance will not do enough. You do
maybe
need
it's
to trim.
as in maybe not invest in an HD camera unless you've manscaped yourself.
Well, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we're saying. Treat yourself. Get a nice HD camera. You might need it for your work as well, and then obviously your trim down below. Best of both worlds. That's you sorted.
On we go. Anyway, on with some rugby. 8 minutes in, 9 minutes in. What are we? We're 3 minutes. We've got a 3 minute theme tune. We're not doing too bad today. People said this bit lasts 14 minutes. I don't believe them. Anyway, there's been a bit of news before we get on to the main talking points of Scotland versus Wales. We'll try and put that off as long as we possibly can. Sorry, Phil. So Glasgow have actually signed some players, Iain and John.
Mm-hmm.
So quite from left field signings, I'd say. So we've got Jack Dempsey, the Australian back rower, played in the 2019 World Cup for Australia. I mean, I guess it makes sense in terms of having someone available throughout the year, John, but it was I don't think anybody was expecting that.
No, and I think that the general kind of consensus is that's a very big signing for Glasgow, actually, and it kind of goes against the types of signings we've been making over the last few years, and there's kind of a feel that this maybe has a bit of the Dave Rennies about it, that perhaps Dave has said to Jack Dempsey, do you know what, son, you're not going to be in my reckoning for next couple of years. Go away, get some experience. Glasgow's a great place for you to go and enjoy yourself, and then we'll have a look at you in a couple of years' time. Or
Dave Rennie's not being able to shift his house during lockdown in Glasgow and is renting it to Jack Dempsey. He said, who can I persuade that Glasgow's a nice place to go and live and rent my house out to them so I'm not paying my mortgage?
The cynic in me suggests that might be accurate. Did you see, actually, on that note, when Big Petrus was leaving Glasgow and his house was was listed? What a beautiful house that was, by the way.
It was a lovely house.
Yeah. I mean, Saracens have got a lot to answer for.
We'll move on before we get sued. Iain, you happy with that signing?
I don't know a lot about him, but I know that he has wallaby caps, and it's just he's had a few injury issues, which is lowered his game time. But hell, it seems like you don't. Well, what I've said, you may have seen my tweet about how there was a lot of people complaining, why is there not a Scottish boy coming in? But the fact of the matter is, we're bringing in somebody who is already test match quality. He's been at the World Cup. He's clearly a good player, and he won't be away during international stages, and that's where we've been losing lots of points. We're getting horsed. So no, it looks like a pretty good signing as long as he can stay fit, which is probably smooth the transition period. And the fact that the board has want to let him go. He looks like the big ball carrier that we've all been crying for in the back row, especially.
as long as he isn't. I mean, my only concern is that our previous Australian international import,
That was.
who
I did finish off the tweet by saying, as long as he doesn't make a frisbee of it.
But
I don't think we'll see Jack passing from his knees.
No, I was going to say,
It'll be
even if
good
he
offload
does,
otherwise.
even if he does, I mean, he's a big boy, like, so, I mean, even on his knees, he's probably taller than Frisbee.
Probably taller than Nick Grib.
But, well, yes.
Straight into the breadbasket.
So the other signing, which has kind of been leaked today by the player himself, because he changed his location on Instagram, is a young player called Cole Forbes, who is, I think, was in. I'll get this right. Gary Heatley's tonight has said he was an unused sub against Scotland in the last Under-20s World Cup. We think he's Scottish qualified, John. I think someone's done some digging in. I mean, his surname's Forbes. He sounds like he's more Edinburgh than Glasgow, maybe, with a surname like that. But
yeah, well, I mean, we believe that he might be Scots qualified, but certainly, yes. I mean, there's no qualification. Like, thinking back to the Brandon Thompson issue, there's no qualification that he's had for New Zealand that's made him not eligible to represent us if he is qualified. So yeah, certainly comes under. He's a 21-year-old, 10/15/wing, depending which website you look at.
Yeah, he's the ninth best fly half in the Mitre 10 Cup at the minute out of 19, Iain, according to Rugby Pass. I don't know how I don't think they update the stats anymore, but Glasgow is saying he's a fullback on their Twitter, or they're hinting they've signed a fullback. So I assume that's where they're going to be seeing him.
Yeah, well, I think it was Rugby Pass said first 5/8, or as we know, standoff in Northern Hemisphere money. Yeah, but the Rugby Pass Index, I just don't trust that at all, because after Scotland beat England, Johnny Gray went down.
Are they still actually updating it?
Well, I'm pretty sure it said like updated as of, what date was the Scotland England game? I think it updated the day after. So I don't know if anyone's actually inputting data or if they're just updating it like randomly. But he was just the 11th best international lock in the world, and he'd lost points for his performance against England. So I don't really trust it. They also did the ratings for that Rugby 20 game I had, which had Adam Gilchrist and Adam Hastings as Scotland's best players.
Grant Gilchrist, not Adam, surely.
Was that probably how he was named in the game, though?
Yeah.
That's what he looked like. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, Nick Grigg looked like a stocky Matt. Matt Scott looked like a stocky Nick Grigg. Sorry, taller Nick Grigg. It was ridiculous.
There's some very strange. I can't remember what they are. Some people will be able to tell me, but there's there are some very strange players on that game.
Yeah, there's a lot of licensing issues, as is the way. So that's why Pichot might have had a point about the whole.
Yeah, if you go the other way and go for the Rugby Challenge games, which are better games, just saying, they don't have any of the licenses apart from England, New Zealand, and Australia. So it gets a bit interesting. It's Pro Evo-esque.
I wasted so much of my life going through Pro Evo, changing everybody's name. Think all that time what I could have done with that and Championship Managers 2000, 2001.
I got the option file to update it, and it only takes 15 minutes, but I just can't be bothered. I know who the team's meant to be.
Option files. Look at you with options files. Back in my day, before option files, you had to go and manually change names.
I haven't got one of my mates made me. John, you've seen them. My Pro Evo custom football tops.
I have, yes. Yeah, yep.
I knew Phil would be. I knew Twitch would be good for this. And Phil's on Twitch. He said Gavin Henson looks like a Bo Selector character in Rugby Challenge. Might try and see if I can find evidence of that as the evening goes on. A bit of the other side of Scotland. Then we've got a bit of news. Jack Blaine has extended his contract, and he's been quite a good a good youngster that's kind of made his mark, I think, for Edinburgh, kind of shown a lot of promise, Iain?
Yeah, the couple of times I've done match sports in Edinburgh, he's been, especially as one of the younger players, one that's definitely stood out. Scored a very good try against Ulster to bring Edinburgh back into the game. Cut a lovely line coming in from fullback. So yeah, a very promising talent for the outside backs going forward, as they say, and certainly one that will keep Blair King on his toes.
Yeah.
And with Doohan away, might give him more opportunities.
And then, John, the other bit of news that you were very excited about is that Mini Murrayfield's been finished, which resulted in you posting a picture of a tent into our group chat.
A £45 gazebo from Blacks, yes. Yes, our editor-in-chief may have suggested he was looking for images of the new Mini Murrayfield for various reports and stuff, and I duly obliged my artistic take on it. Yes, no, I mean, it's good. It's good. It's peak Edinburgh, though, isn't it? Finish a new stadium just in time for no fans being allowed anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. But Alan Dimmick was suggesting we need to try and get names for it.
Oh, excellent. This sounds perfect.
So I don't know. We'll have to try and think of. So I thought the Brendan Lacey Thunderdome was the Brendan Laney Thunderdome was the first thing that came to mind.
The Colosseum of Chunk.
Oh, that's the Chunk Colosseum.
Could we base it on sort of Mario Kart levels, and we can try and come up with some stuff like that.
Yeah. So if you've got any suggestions for the names for Mini Murrayfield, then get in touch. Oh, Acid Casual says Dan Park. That's very good.
Yes, that is yes.
Okay, I think we should go further and call it Dan Park Park.
Dan Park Park.
Minifield. Alan McDonald says Minifield.
Minifield.
So very good. I'm going to try and see if I can do this now. So apologies to anybody. I'm going to share screen because I found the Henson one. So where is it? Here we go. See if I can share this. There's Gavin Henson on Rugby Challenge. Can you see that? It's quite upsetting.
Who's he beside?
Don't know.
That's
the arms more than anything.
It's incredibly upsetting. So that's a little treat for our. That's a little treat for. Kirsten Cooper does ask, does that mean Murrayfield Wanderers have to find a new pitch? I believe they've already had to find a new pitch. I don't know if there's going to be some sort of agreement, but they've been playing elsewhere, is my understanding anyway. And there's a bit of a hoo-ha about that when Minifield was announced, but I think they've managed to find find another place. Let's talk about Wales Scotland then. Let's get round to it. Let's get on to it. The big news today is that Zander Fagerson, and we'll get this out of the way now because it's going to be the big talking point, and it's everybody's hands in the ruck. Zander Fagerson's been banned for 4 games following the disciplinary hearing. The reason why he's been banned for longer than Peter O'Mahony is because he essentially pleaded not guilty to a red card offence. He accepted that he'd committed an offence but wasn't red cardable. So, but although he showed remorse, he didn't accept he was guilty of a red card offence. So they can't reduce it as much as somebody who does admit that it's a red card offence, who can be reduced by 50%. It's a mid-entry point. It's automatically mid-entry because it's head contact, although the charge was charging into a ruck. Because it's head contact, it has to be mid-entry, so it has to be 6 weeks, although, and we'll come on to this, so all the rules I could find said it's 4 weeks, so it's obviously changed at some point, but there's nothing on the World Rugby website about it. John, let's start at the beginning. Was it for you? Was it a red card?
Yes. By the letter of the law, yes. The mitigating circumstances were minimal enough that you can see the debate, right? But unfortunately, in the climate we're in just now, it's contact with the head. It's it's going to be red. And that, whether we agree, we're all for player safety. We've talked about it so much in this podcast, and we need players to stop doing that. So the only way you're going to change that behaviour is by maximum punishment. You can see his point. He is coming into a ruck. He's trying to get low. The person is dipping at the same time, and then there is contact with the head. But by the letter of the law, it's red now.
Yeah. I think the other thing was interesting when I watched it back yesterday. He's made an error anyway, because I don't think he's in the right position on the pitch, because it's Stuart Hogg and Ali Price. I can't remember who's carried the ball in. Someone's carried the ball in, and Stuart Hogg is the only player trying to take Wyn Jones off the ball. And so Fagerson has to come in at speed to clear him out. But actually, Iain, I think he probably should have been a lot closer to the ruck anyway, so that he didn't have to come charging in, because there was no other forwards there.
Yeah, but you can't. I suppose you can't just solely blame him for it.
Whether it was his job or somebody should have been.
Yeah.
You can't have three backs competing at a ruck.
But then, how far away has he been? Like, from what I've done a sort of head to head just recently there, and O'Mahony's got a bit more of a run up for me, I think. And there is, it's just more the fact that I don't know if this is encroaching on hands on ruck, or it's I'm hands on rucking my own hands on ruck. There are the fact that Matt Carley said there was no mitigating factors when there is. You look at the O'Mahony one. The fact is, it's Thomas Francis is kind of sitting up in the ruck. He's face on to O'Mahony. O'Mahony can see that as he hits him. And for me, I think the contact by O'Mahony is more direct to Wyn Jones. Like a couple of times we're not sure, because I was doing a online watch on with it. I'm peering over the top of my laptop, and I'm like, was it like completely direct contact with the chin? He's hit his chin, but it's not as hard as O'Mahony's.
No, I mean he's making an attempt to get underneath the player to lift him up off the ruck, but as John said, he hits his head, and I think even if it's head on head, it's not. That's an automatic red card, and I think the problem is, and I can see why people get upset, is that happens like a dozen or more times every game and doesn't get pinged. It's just he's been caught, and I think the problem is when you charge into a ruck, you're asking to be caught. Whereas if you don't charge into a ruck and you clear somebody out like that, you're probably not going to get caught, because no one's seen it and gone, what's going on there? Then I think even probably Hamish Watson caught Alan Wyn Jones earlier in the game, but he hadn't charged into the ruck. But I think there was head on head contact.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. He's almost. The fact he's such a big lad as well, he's a big rampaging prop forward coming smashing into the ruck from quite, it is quite a distance he comes in at, and he is travelling at a fair rate of knots when he does make contact. There's a perfectly valid argument to say that like we shouldn't be rucking like that anyway. If we were actually just following the laws in the current state, nobody should be torpedoing into rucks, and whether contact with head or not, it shouldn't actually matter. But that's the kind of spectacle that World Rugby have allowed to happen, and they're now reaping the rewards of that, because they've got huge issues with concussion, and they're having to penalise players massively for these incidents. I think it's wrong to compare the Fagerson and the O'Mahony one. I think the Fagerson one was much more innocent in that, as you rightly say, he's trying to come in, he's trying to clear out. He's not deliberately setting out to smash the person in the head. I think the other gentleman in question might have been doing that because he has previous on that, whether the disciplinary committee want to acknowledge that or not. But until we're in a situation now where contact with the head should and will be red. That's just where we are, and it's unfortunate.
I think the difficulty is that even if we are accepting of that it's a red, is that we don't have the judgment of either the Peter O'Mahony or the Zander Fagerson hearings to understand the decision-making process that went on to be able to compare it, because all we have is a press release that says Scottish Rugby Union said, contested that was even a red card and that he apologised. There's something in the Peter O'Mahony press release that says that there was off-field mitigating factors which can be taken into account. I think that's that his wife's pregnant, so he wasn't thinking straight. And obviously there's going to be loads of stuff that are thrown in at these hearings. I don't understand why it can't be. If there's personal information like that someone doesn't want getting out, then redact it. But the rest of it, how have they applied the framework? How have they looked at whether it's middle entry? What arguments have both sides put in? Otherwise, all we're left with is comparing the Peter O'Mahony and the Zander Fagerson one. Whereas actually, that's not what the disciplinary committee are doing. They're not sat there going, well, it's not like they've got a kind of a colour chart of this is bad and this is okay, and they're kind of like holding the footage up to one another. They have to consider everyone on its circumstances. So they're not sat there going, was it as bad or was it better than Peter O'Mahony's? They're just saying what happened here and what's the sanction. Iain, I mean, do you think it'd be easier to understand if we had the judgments?
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering. As you mentioned there, off-field mitigating circumstances. What's that got? That should not come into it in any way whatsoever. I don't know why that's.
It's a thing. It's in the regs.
Well, I'd say more that. Well, how about as an on-field mitigating circumstance?
You can have that as well. You can have that as well.
Right.
You can have on and off-field mitigating circumstances.
Outside of the incident itself, what about when Zander Fagerson had been pinged a couple of times, so he might have been a wee bit annoyed about that, and also he was closest witness to Liam Williams leading into James Lang with a forearm and then having a second go at him with an elbow, which the referee and touch judges and TMO refused to look at.
Yeah, and he's not been cited either, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty blatant. I just saw, the first thing I saw was more the sort of the afters where he tried to put the elbow in. But when you look at his running angle, he leads with the forearm at James Lang's face. It definitely should have been reviewed. And considering Liam Williams is just back from a 3-week ban, which was for the same reason that Zander Fagerson's got 4 weeks. And you heard Liam Williams as he's walked off it, what are we playing touch now, is it? And then swore at another referee as he walked off, saying this is an effing joke, apparently. Somebody said they heard this on S4C's pickup. I didn't hear it myself on Prem. But then because he goes and says, oh no, yeah, I agree it was a red card, I'm really sorry about that. He gets 3 weeks, whereas Zander gets 4 weeks because he went, I'm not sure if mine was. Whereas there's potential for another charge against Liam Williams for what he said to the referee as he walked off.
Yeah, I think the difficulty for me is this is the whole. I've seen someone saying that it's based on the naval courts. I think at the very least it's based on the civil courts and balance of probabilities, and you've got barristers and former players in there making their judgments. I think for me, probably it needs to be removed from being aligned to a judicial system. I think you can this idea that you come in and you plead guilty and you get 50% off the tariff, that it should be a bit more clear cut and a bit more transparent.
So I just said I would quote tweet this guy before. Sorry to interrupt, John, but this guy Brian McLeish, who replied to my tweet. He says, creating a situation where you get a reduced penalty for admitting your guilt is judicial coercion.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the fact is we've got a running joke now in rugby regarding the biscuits.
Global.
This is the whole system, the whole judicial system is a complete and utter farce. And when you're saying about would it make it better if we knew what they were actually talking about, are you suggesting transparency, Cammy? Are you
Yeah, I
suggesting
mean,
World Rugby is transparent? My goodness, surely not.
we've got Martin Bell in the comments says the process is wrong. Contact with the head should get the same punishment no matter what. Off-field mitigating circumstances makes even more of a mockery of the current process, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard to disagree with it. I mean, like that somebody else said, was saying to me today that with hashtag rugby values, you shouldn't be trying to game the system, but that's exactly what a good sports barrister will do. They're all about gaming the system. It's trying to work out even the SRU with pleading that it wasn't a red card, were trying to game the system, because if they'd gone in and said, we accept it's a red, they have to accept it's middle entry, 50% off 3 weeks. So the only way they're going to get Zander to play any further part is to go in and say it wasn't a red card in the first place.
Yep.
So it's just massively open to gaming the system, and people coming in and that's what barristers and solicitors and lawyers do. It's all it's about trying to get the best outcome for your client, isn't it? And that's playing a game. Like Phil's come in with a comment saying, Owen Farrell and his charity work, the system's completely messed. And I agree with, what's someone donating the donkey sanctuary got anything to do with whether or not you smash someone in the head or not?
Especially as it's Nigel Ray doing it.
It's somebody else is paying money to charity on my behalf for tax purposes.
I'm going to get us sued tonight, guys. Sorry.
So when like Farrell and O'Mahony got their sentence reduced for good disciplinary records, right? They might not have been sent off, but they've been cited a few times. It's like obviously they're close to border, they're close to the line as it is.
Yeah.
Some of them you've looked at them and gone, how have you not been cited? But hey, that's how it is. I mean, Zander's never been red carded, has he?
No. We've got a comment from Christian Cooper, and this is something Rory posted on Twitter this week. He says, in what circumstances does a player get sent off for an HIA? If a prop forward torpedoes into a ruck, hits a man on the head and gets a red card, should the other player not get a head assessment? At the end of the day, it's the whole reason for player safety. Sounds like the punishment's more important than the possible damage caused.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people talking about that. I mean, I was on the Rock and Roll podcast on Monday night, and we were talking about this. And I think even if Wyn Jones hasn't shown any signs of concussion, you almost really what they should do is almost kind of introduce like a pitch side check for players like that. And I'm sure he would have had the kind of, the doctor would have given him once over and checked he was okay. Once they've seen it on the big screen, he's had a head knock. But you almost want to say, well, you need 2 minutes at the site. You can bring someone on for 5 minutes. You don't have to go and do the full HIA down the tunnel thing. But we've clearly seen a glance on the head. You're going to have to spend at least 5 minutes just double checking that you don't need to go off down the tunnel for an HIA. You need almost something in between. Yep. So he's not showing any signs. He doesn't have to go off for 10 minutes for the full staring at a computer screen given base level tests, but he does need to just double check he's all right, because we've just seen him get hit in the head. Well, that seems fair.
How much work No, you're absolutely right, and I think that could even be extended as far as to say that, how many incidents have we seen where a player has had a bump or had a head knock, or and just because they're able to get up and shake it off, and they're not showing any signs, they play on, and then then you hear afterwards, actually, all right, they're out with concussion now, a couple of weeks down the line. The TMO has got, so we are in a privileged position in rugby, and we have a TMO system that, like it or not, is now very quick to pick up, or should be quick to pick up most things. There should be much more communication between the TMO and the various coaches and medical teams. If there's any sign of a head knock or any sign of someone taking so much as a bump on their head, as you rightly say, there should be a 2, 3, 5 minute swap that can be done just to kind of check them over, and that should be unlimited. It should, we don't want players playing on with potential concussion. This is the whole point of this whole framework and everything we're trying to do in rugby. So we need to progress with that as well. Yeah,
I think that seems fair. Is there anything more we want to say on Zander Fagerson's suspension other than justice for Zandbags?
Well, I did think he maybe went in. I was a bit concerned he had went into the disciplinary hearing and sandbagged them, and that's why he got 4.
You can't do it over Zoom. It must have been on Zoom or Teams or something.
You just got to grab his screen and.
So just to add to what John was saying about maybe a 5-minute substitution. There are like pitch side saliva tests you can do apparently to test concussion. So why aren't they more widely used? I believe
They're being
Harlequins
trialled.
were definitely had trialled them a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
but
Bristol and Newcastle were using them this season. Apparently, we don't trust Harlequins with stuff in their mouths.
Look, what's your? I don't know if this is maybe going to come up later, but Super Rugby Australia, they're going to trial the 20-minute like red cards. Then you can bring someone on.
That's a stupid idea. Can I just put that?
I concur fully.
Yes, it's a stupid.
So what do you get? Is it? But it's not just for red cards, though, is it? It's for
that's for red cards.
Is it just red cards? You can't challenge any other call, because I was going to say is that it's in the last 10 minutes, in first 10 minutes, isn't it? And then I think it's for certain offences in the last 10 minutes of the game.
You're talking about the captain's challenge. No, this is the 20 minutes. So a red card results and a person goes off for 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Then you can bring on a sub.
Right. That's stupid.
Captain's call, totally agree with that. I think that's a great shout.
Like they've had that in tennis and cricket now for ages. So,
adds a new dimension, doesn't it, as well? Because for
example, like Zander could have been, let's say if it's an orange card where the refs are like, look, you're kind of at the bottom end of the framework. We'll take you off for 20 minutes, and then, especially if it's like a position like that, because of the injury Scotland had, we ended up with Cummings in the back row. Because me and you and John had talked about this when I think this is when you were moving house, Cammy, about who could potentially move into the back row, and lo and behold, it was Scott Cummings.
There you go.
So we called it.
Influencers.
But the captain's call is an interesting one, because actually Stuart Hogg was trying to do it at the end of the game. We'll work in a way. Let's talk about how the game ended now. It seems like a good time to talk about it. You've got that Chris. A lot of people have talked about Chris Harris, and he's over the ball, and I understand why Hogg's calling for it. My feeling is that Matt Carley made the right call, because Chris Harris is one of his arms is round the back of the player on the deck, and the other arm's over, and he eventually manages to shift it over to have two hands there. And I think that's what Matt Carley's seeing. He's only seeing a player over another player, almost holding him to the ground. He's not got a clear shot of someone doing a clean jackal.
Yes, but how many calls did he make where he's given penalties
for
that exact reason through the game? It's ultimately down to that consistency element, and I agree with you, right? For what it's worth, I don't think it is necessarily a penalty, and I don't think it really frustrates me when players get away with that just now. We're trying to make the breakdown cleaner, we're trying to make the game more entertaining, but we're allowing, like, you're hearing referees saying you're on the man, not the ball, and it's like, well, yeah, absolutely. That why is that even a debate? Why is hugging a man on the ground nowhere near the ball being given as a penalty by people? It's silly. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I don't think it is a penalty, but if he hadn't given them through the game, we would be sitting here going, well, at least he was consistent.
Yeah. He was. Iain, how did you feel about what was your view on that, the way the match ended?
Well, the main thing is that, as I was watching it, and you saw Duhan's pass go, and you're like, oh no, Hogg's knocked it on, but it wasn't Hogg, it was Liam Williams. And then, has he taken Hogg off the ball? He pretty much has. And that is one of those sort of agonising situations where you would hope that somebody could see that it wasn't actually a Scotland player. Because did they play on, or did they just? Oh, I think it was advantage. They played on.
He shouted. No, it wasn't advantage to us. I watched it back. He shouts that Matt Carley shouts it's gone backwards.
Right. Yeah. So I think when Harris hits the breakdown, his knee maybe off his feet for half a second, but like you said, there's lots of times you see these not seen. But what do you guys think about? Did Williams stop Hogg from getting there?
Well, Brodie Duncan says that was the Lewis Williams tackle off the ball, and Stuart Hogg was the more obviously a penalty.
Yeah,
and I think that's it. I think the problem for me is I can't get that annoyed about it because we shouldn't have been in that position at the end of the game anyway. And that's what it comes down to when you look at it. It's all very well getting angry about the fact that we maybe had a couple of penalty calls right at the death. And, you know, the way Finn Russell was going, he probably would have knocked it over. But to be 17-3 up and almost at the end of the first half, and then to let Wales back into the game in the way that we did, even before Zander Fagerson's red card, is utterly criminal, John.
Yeah, have to agree. We've been so quick. We were so quick to dish out praise to Scotland when Iain's just saying peace to us. We were so quick to dish out praise to Scotland when they managed the game against England well. The opposite has to be said this time round. It was utterly. It was like they got to a point 35 minutes in and thought, you know what, we've got this one, we've got this in the bag, and they switched off, and it was really, really poor.
Yeah.
And Wales, they punished them, and like you said, even before people are saying Zander Fagerson's sending off cost us the game. No, it didn't. We were, by the balance of things, we were second best at that point anyway, and the probability would have been Wales would have went on to win that because we were poor.
I don't think so. I mean, I would. I'm not sure I agree with that they would have gone on to win it, but I do think that was within our. The whole game was within our control to win, and it's that thing. It was 17-3, and everybody almost to a man switched off when you know at the restart, and then you get the Wales try, and everyone's. It just wasn't the you know. Scotland lack that ruthlessness, and we always have done. I think that's what I was annoyed. I tweeted at the end of the game that, you know, anybody who says we've learned a lesson can get in the sea. And what I mean, it was, as Brodie Duncan saying in the comments, you know, it felt like the Scotland team started to coast. And I think that's probably the right word for it, Iain, almost, is it that, you know, I bet a higher class team would have absolutely put Wales to the sword. It was Scotland letting them back into it rather than Wales letting them back in, or fighting their way back in, rather.
Yeah, it would have been like, I don't know if you've ever seen the film History of Violence, but when Viggo Mortensen stamped on someone's neck, it would have been like that. That's, you know, they would have just been
very visceral.
I mean, if you've ever seen it, it is very visceral. But no, you know, the opening 5 minutes, that's when Scotland started to worry, because Wales had that pressure and they kept on getting penalties. I think they won 3 or 4 penalties within the first 20 minutes, 3 within the first 10, possibly even as well. They only came away with 3 points, but then after that, you know, we dominated for long periods. But then just those 10 minutes, even 5 minutes before the end of the first half, 10 minutes after that's when it absolutely killed us, because we didn't maintain discipline. I don't want to preempt Alan McDonald's suggestion about the big bearded man that came on.
We can cover it now, but yeah, I mean, there was definitely a draw. I think when, you know, it must have been hard because I think Blade Thompson was kind of cited as being the big line-out operator that was good, and that's the reason he'd been picked. So it's quite hard. It must be quite hard to adapt to someone going off that early in a game, and that obviously had an impact on Scotland's line-out going forward. And Gary Graham, you know, came on in it and gave away 3 penalties. You know, I think Zander Fagerson gave away 3, but 2 of those are in the scrum. But to give 3 penalties away in open play for one player is pretty poor.
Yeah, you would. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you want your back row to be kind of making a nuisance of themselves, but in a game like that, particularly when, you know, you're talking about all the build up to the game, all we've been talking about is, right, don't give away penalties. Wales will kick penalties from everywhere. They've got, you know, two very good goal kickers. Let's not give away penalties. And then to come on, and a couple of them, with Gary Graham in particular, a couple of them were pretty brain dead, and that's what really frustrates me. You know, the lack of, because again, compare it to the Calcutta Cup. There was intelligence. There was they were taking rugby risks that were sensible. They knew when to compete. They knew when to lay back. And this is something that, and maybe it's worth talking about now. People have obviously had a wee dig at Matt Carley as a referee for various reasons. But this is not the first time that we've come up against him and not been able to adjust to his interpretation of the game. And I mean, it should be no surprise to us how he's going to referee the game, because we had it against Ireland previously, and the same things happened. We were pinged for the same things. So someone somewhere hasn't done their homework, which is concerning.
Yeah, and Alan McDonald saying that Gary Graham and Matt Ferguson in particular seemed to struggle to keep the aggression at the rolling boil needed to maintain play without boiling into penalties. So it was, it was a really strange game. Actually, a couple of people have commented saying it's not the kind of game that we've been involved with as Scotland before in the Six Nations, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a strange sensation to be part of it, Iain, to be part of a kind of 24-25 thriller, because normally we, another team just plays poorly and we get lucky on the day. So, it's not all bad, because we're more competitive. People are expecting more of us. We're in these games till the end.
But have we not been saying that for have we not learned from these games? As what annoyed you? We keep getting involved in these kind of debacles, and we have done for the odd spanking aside, like 61-21. I'd actually rather watch the England 61-21 game than that one again today, because that was we really shot ourselves. So if you think about the Australia World Cup quarterfinal, we were I wouldn't say lucky, but we were like Wales at the weekend. We took our chances when we had them. And that's what's happened to us. I wouldn't say we've completely outplayed Wales, but for large sections of the match we have done.
I think you can say we completely outplayed them, because in every single measurable metric we completely outplayed them in that match. I mean, Scotland made 95%. I think they had a better line out, but
line out defence was poor. It was not the line out as such. There was one where Turner threw in Alan Wynne Jones, and you have to get off the floor to slap it back.
Yeah,
I actually thought some people have complained about the tactical change at the end. I actually thought it was quite clever to have all Cummings and the Grey boys on, because when it comes to a line out, you are very unlikely to beat them, especially with the Wales only had really Alan Wynne Jones and Adam Beard. Because Aaron Wainwright's not at all. Fal's knees are a bit dodgy. He's going to break at some point. So I actually thought it was the right call to do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I felt sorry for Darcy Graham going off, because he did an absolute stormer of a game kind of coming into that. And it's a shame.
He's not played a lot recently, so he's probably going to start.
He would have come off anyway, I think. But I thought that it made sense to keep it in the forwards. And it paid off. Stuart Hogg got the try from them battering the line and putting the Welsh scrum under pressure. And actually, it worked in terms of maintaining possession for that. It's 12 minutes when Scotland pretty much had the last 12 minutes of the game. Scotland had pretty much all the possession, just working it through the phases and trying to find little gaps in the Welsh defence, and they were opening up. And even that, people have talked about that Ali Price kick to nothing late in the game, but actually watching that back, there's space between Liam Williams and Lewis Rees-Zammit there, and he found it, but he just didn't get the bounce of the ball. That ball kicks on and it goes straight into touch, and all of a sudden you're in with screwing his face up.
Yeah, it's because you broke.
I broke, did I?
You went all robot there for a sec.
And also the price kick. I mean, it wasn't as bad as the one at the squall, the England-Scotland squall at Murrayfield last year, when he did one with I think there was 40 seconds left, and I was sitting beside Hugh Dan McClellan at the time. Here's me name dropping. I had Gav Harper to the left as well, but he's not as important. I do hope Gav is watching live. No, but I swore a bit, and Hugh Dan was also not too pleased with Ali's choice at that kick. Obviously not as sweary as me, but it's like twice in two very close-knit games. It's like, is that really the right call? Especially when you've got that momentum going.
Well, you wonder where the call's coming from as well. And so to Cammy's point, right? You put the kick through, and on a dry day, on a dry track, that bounces and maybe goes into touch, and then you've got all your line-out operators. The point you've made about having 3 very, very good line-out locks on the park at that point. You've got a great opportunity to challenge a Welsh line-out, which generally hasn't been that good. But the pitch was soaking, and no kick had kicked on all day. So, there maybe... Right, look, heat of the moment. These guys are paid lots of money to make the right decisions. Was it the right decision? Evidently, the outcome says no, but you can understand what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I get that. And I think the other thing is that at that point, Scotland were kind of going between their 10-metre and the Welsh 10-metre line either side of the halfway line. They weren't exactly going forward.
But then you see with the very last moment of the match, Finn Russell does that offload in the wide channel where it looks like there's hee-haw threat, but the fact that he can take out 2 or 3 men with one flip,
yeah,
Ali should know that he's capable of doing that, especially that close to the Wales line.
Wrong choice, but I can see what he was doing. It wasn't as daft a kick, I think, as it looked at the time. Well, because I wasn't. I think at the time I wondered what he was doing, and watching it back, I understood what he was trying to do. But like you were saying, John, maybe outcome says no, but you can understand what he's aiming for.
That's what we've said so many times on here, that we're like trying to understand what he was trying to do. Right? Yeah, the outcome, it hasn't worked, right? Fair enough. But if it did work, if that ball bounces up, goes an awkward way, we get a Welsh knock on, or bobbles into touch and we secure the line out, then he's a hero. Then he's what a tactical genius. He's controlled his game management is superb, is what every fan would have been saying. So it just shows the very thin line, and perhaps we need to all just take a wee step back and say, do you know what? We were in a cracking test match. We've lost by a point. It was one of those losses we've talked about, that we were right in the match. We probably should have won the match. We haven't. Let's see what we can learn from it. But ultimately, we're in a match with a decent side.
Yeah.
And we've been beaten by a moment of absolute genius.
Yeah, and a red card. And that's beating ourselves, but to a certain extent. But it's also the reason why I personally don't think we'd lost that match if Zander Fagerson was on the...
Do you know who called for the red card? It was the massive pluke on the side of Matt Carley's face.
Oh, how bad was that? Oh my!
I've always seen it when I've watched the replay. I was like, Jesus Christ! It
wasn't even a pluke. It was like, like in Austin Powers. It was absolutely horrendous.
So, I don't know, John. You might not be old enough for this, but. Cammy, Nigel Kennedy in Spitting Image.
Yes. Yes. Does he always have it? I don't want to I don't have to edit this out.
No.
Have we checked? This isn't like some sort of skin abnormality that he's got that you're...
We're not body shaming now. I thought we were really woke as well. Now we're body shaming.
Oh, hang on, I need to get this out, don't I?
Go for it. Yes!
The woke klaxon. It's your first woke klaxon.
Welcome to the woke klaxon, Iain.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good. So long as it's just a spot and it wasn't like some sort of... I don't want it to be something he's lived with all his life and we're tearing him apart, but it was just a case that he needs to get some skin rub.
I can recommend there's a really nice charcoal L'Oreal rub. Beautiful. Does the job.
I reckon Manscaped must do something for it. Maybe we'll...
John, I think I've got the same one. Oh,
Oh,
Two
come for the
head
come for the rugby, stay for the skincare tips.
Moving on.
Moving on, So, I mean, I guess that's the point. Like you said, John, that's the positive, isn't it? That we were in the match. The red card doesn't get spotted. Zander, is closer to the ruck.
I don't see it as that much of a positive because we've been in matches
Yeah, I
quite a
know.
lot over the last few years. So, I mean, right, call me a cynical, pessimistic, miserable swine all you want, or worse things, or we call far worse things. But again, this was just another case of we've screwed our own pooch a wee bit there. But I mean, as a slight aside, and obviously, we notice them more often than others. Is it just me, or do we get on more? You'd hope to think that bad calls balance out, and particularly, as somebody who supports a successful football team, and that charge gets levied against them, it's like, oh, they get all the calls. Is it just me, or does Scotland sometimes do we don't get the rub of the green that often, do we? I can think of a few occasions, like when the Laidlaw try against Samoa, which puts us into the quarterfinals of the World Cup. He'd slightly knocked on, but we already had penalty advantage by that point. I think
you never get the rub of the green when you're on the losing side. So I don't know if it's the question then is, are we on the losing side because we're not getting the rub of the green, or are we
Schrodinger's
referees, isn't it? Are we losing because we're not getting the rub of the green, or we're not getting the rub of the green so losing? Yeah,
that's podcast. I'd read before, like, in terms of, again, thinking about it from a football perspective, they did say that the bigger teams do get more of the calls, and it's purely because you've got more of possession, more attack, more you're in those positions to get those big calls more often. Could it be argued that in some cases Scotland? I mean, you wouldn't say that about the weekend, but
yeah, that's the title. Schrodinger's rub. That's definitely the title of the podcast. Thank you, Alan McDonald, for that. But yeah, you're right. It's if you're spending more time defending, but that's not what Scotland did at the weekend, I guess, is it? But if you've been careless with the ball and you're not adapting to what the referee's asking you to do, and you're not quite getting in the right positions, then you're not going to get the rub of it. If you're not doing what he's asking you to do, then
he did seem to fall out with Zander right away, though. Like, Zander's lovely. Anyone who's met Zander knows he was a choir boy. He's lovely. Such a nice guy, and Matt didn't click with him. I think they need to go for coffee when they can.
John, Harold Shipman was a doctor. Is that going to get it out?
Why, yes, he was. Thank you for that.
Zander's a choir boy. Harold Shipman was a doctor.
I mean, okay.
I think we should clarify, right?
Cammy,
Zander Fagerson hasn't murdered anyone.
I can't edit video, I can edit audio, but right. So let's start at the start before we get in trouble. Well, let's not draw comparisons between Zander Fagerson and Harold Shipman, Iain. Christ.
Well, let's not draw comparisons between choir boys and being innocent.
I was just saying he's a nice guy.
You said he was a choir boy. That's choir boyist.
I think it's.
Well, it's not. It's not choir boyist if he's in favour of choir boys. I'm not saying John's in favour of choir boys in that way either. Let's be
clear.
There
were many more potential jokes that could have been used there by a lesser man than me.
I said Zander's a nice guy and he's a choir boy. I neither suggested or inferred anything by the fact he's a choir boy. I was merely suggesting that he was a choir boy.
Yeah, man. Clearly you've not watched enough Netflix murder porn to know that. Oh, he was just a nice guy. He kept himself to himself. Serial killer.
Right.
For all we know,
that is very, very clear here, right?
Disclaimer, Cammy, please.
First of all, We're not comparing
accusing
Zander
Zander
Fagerson
being a
to
serial
Harold Shipman.
Xander Ferguson could be a serial killer.
Secondly, Zander Fagerson is not.
Oh my God.
Right. Okay. So the last 10 minutes have been satire. I think that covers it legally.
They've been as big a joke as the disciplinary committee of the
Well done, Ian. Well done.
Nicely saved. Nicely saved.
Oh my goodness, I'm actually crying.
If anyone wants to sue us, Xander's after suing us, then just send us an email, podcast@scottishrugbyblog.co.uk, and I will send you Ian's address.
Yeah, slash Ian here.
So,
You think I
anyway,
know a good lawyer?
let's move on. I think that's all we're going to cover. We've been on for an hour now. Let's go and let's move on to something else. Should we do Lions chat? I'm going to play a banner while we all play
So,
a
you know,
jingle while we compose ourselves.
slightly before, well, are
Okay,
we
go.
going to do fantasy league? I
We are going to do
suggest
fancy league.
first.
We'll do fancy league after Lions chat. We'll do fancy league.
Well, this is why I'm annoyed because Xander's cost. Xander,
We'll get on a fancy league.
All right.
We'll get on do you want to link it to Xander? You're not going to. Do you promise you won't slander him if I do the jingle?
Yep, it would be a smoother segue.
Right. Let's go to the jingle.
Fantasy League, Fantasy League. We're going to have a chat about a Fantasy League, Fantasy League, Fantasy League. It's time to have a chat about a Fantasy League.
Yes, it's our fantasy league chat. Let's see in which new and exciting ways Ian can slander Zander Fagerson now. You can join our Super Brew Fantasy League. You go to the Twitter account, which is @ScottRugbyBlog, and the pinned tweet has got details of our Super Brew League if you want to join that. I was in first position. I'm now in fifth, so I'm most upset with that. And that was down to England letting me down because George Ford's not a kicker, and I hadn't realised that.
Is that globally or just in the league?
Globally, I don't think I'm doing. I'm doing in the whole of Scotland. I'm now down to 26. I was first globally. We found out last week, which is
champion of the world.
champion of the world. Yeah, that didn't last very long. David, who was second last week, has leapfrogged me into first.
Oh, we could. Here's another episode title: Cammy, the champion of the world.
Oh, that was last week though. I'm not the champion of the world anymore.
Missed a trick there, guys.
It's not until they've not updated the rankings officially until tomorrow.
Yeah. So I got 224 points last round, and I got 151 this round. So yeah. But yeah, so I didn't do that well. So I was let down by George Ford not kicking. So I was let down by Owen Farrell, really. Ian, did Zander let you down?
Oh yes, he let me down as the worstest. -7.
Wow.
-7 points. I didn't have whereas last week I'd because I didn't pick as many Scotland players because I didn't think we'd win. Zander was one of the few ones I put in, and he cost me dearly, making Johnny May captain, even though it burned my soul.
I did the same. Same mistake.
I had Gary Ringrose in at 13, who only won 4 points, but I think Planet Rugby put him in their team of the week. He's in team of the week. Surely he deserves more than 4. But yeah, it wasn't a great week for me. I mean, last week I scored well above average, but this week I only got 140. Whereas if I hadn't had Zander, I think I would have been up at 154, something like that. I had George on the bench.
Globally, I'm now down to 193 from number one.
Oh, not bad.
It's not bad. That was 16,000, so that's not bad.
Zander's right me that much. I've started smoking on the podcast. I quit smoking years ago, and I've started smoking again.
That's what he's driven you to. I don't know. I don't know where you are on here. Then, Ian, do you know where you are in our fantasy league?
No, because the app is an absolute nightmare.
It is really hard to use. You have to kind of like go through with 3 different screens to find you. I'm way down. Rory's in 86th position in our pool.
I don't even know if I managed to change my team name this year.
I'll see if I can find you. I'm way down at 118 now, so it's not a good look. I haven't gone past you. You're not even in the top 100, I don't think, Iain. So
Oh, good God. Oh wait, I'm 84th.
84th. There you go. So you're doing better than Rory.
Ah, good.
Yeah, join 84th with Dolph. John, you've not got a team this year, have you?
I gracefully
retired.
got out undefeated / completely defeated.
So congratulations to David, who was in second place last week to me, even though it was his birthday. He is in first. We've got Al Taylor in second, Fraser 78 third, Johnny in fourth, and then me in fifth, down 4 places. Friend of the podcast, Alan McDonald, who's listening tonight, who's 11th, up 8 places. So it's exciting.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good to see kind of how you. I mean, that's you had your kind of moment now, Cam.
I've peaked. That's it. Absolutely peaked.
It's downhill from here for you. Although, how are we going to handle the potential France situation with regards to Fantasy League? I mean, like all the other things aside, it's most important that
They've picked their squads.
have they?
There's not a soul missing.
No.
Basically, it's full.
The Sevens team have got coronavirus as well. There's coronavirus within the Sevens squad, and apparently they were training with the 15 squad a week ago. So there's going to be an investigation into what's happened. My understanding is the Six Nations haven't changed the rules of the competition, so there's no scope for it being abandoned and someone being given a bonus point win. So the game would just be postponed and played again at another date.
I mean, if it was us, they would do it.
Stick a typhoon in there as well, coming our way. So yes, so that game, if the games can't go ahead because people are shielding for coronavirus, then potentially it gets postponed. But if France can field a COVID-free squad, then we end up playing a second string, is my guess. But Fabien Golf is out, so he's isolating for 10 days. So I think he'll be Galtier. He'll be out for 10 days, so there won't be much prep. Unless he's training on Zoom. Someone got a laptop. Sean Edwards running up and down with a Zoom call laptop up and in the field shouting at people.
Fabien Galtier is the only man I think can pull off the suit and trainers combo.
Yeah.
He looks
I'm a huge fan of suit and trainers. It is my go-to look. I think I look like Doctor Who.
I once split a pair of trousers. I think I've told this story on the podcast before. I split a pair of suit trousers while I was away for work in a meeting. Nobody noticed. And I went to TK Maxx and bought myself a pair of shorts because I needed some shorts from a holiday. Didn't need any trousers, and returned home in my suit shoes, socks, denim shorts, white shirt, and a brown suit jacket with my broken trousers stuffed in my briefcase. Got quite the looks on the trains from all the ladies. Looks of concern, I should add.
Could have got some gaffer tape to fix those trousers right up.
My wife was like, "Why didn't you buy yourself a pair of sandals? It probably would have looked all right." I said, "Well, I didn't need sandals. I needed shorts." I know, exactly. I went to TK Maxx. I thought, what do I need? I need some shorts for my holiday. Could have bought some jeans. Didn't need jeans. Needed shorts. Those shorts lasted me a good few years as well, so it was a good, happy day out altogether. Anyway, that's Fantasy League, so get involved with that. Let's go and we'll do a bit of this now.
It's the Legally Mandated Lions Chat. The Legally Mandated Lions Chat. We've heard so much about it that it makes us sick, but we've still got to chat about who Gatlin's gonna pick.
Yeah, we haven't done Legally Mandated Lions Chat yet this year, so
well done.
As for those on the audio podcast, a couple of pictures of some famous judges and Warren Gatland. So we, the first thing to say is that the latest Lions news is it's probably going to happen in Australia after all, because they've realised that it can't happen any other time, and Australia is the only COVID free place where you're likely to get fans turned up in a stadium.
Except the Australian Open has had complete and utter carnage trying to do that, because apparently they didn't really think about inviting 30,000 people to a stadium every day. They didn't think that because of lockdown in Melbourne. So,
Did you see that mad woman swearing at Rafa Nadal?
I did not know.
No, she was heckling him, and then she started like flipping him the bird, and she was.
Wow.
He was
Rafa's really nice as well. I don't know if he's a choir boy, but he is really nice as well.
Yeah, someone's a Brody Dog says Dubai's being looked at as an option for the Lions too, but let's no. No, if that I think that would be it for me. Coach back.
You bring the dollar.
Yeah.
First you take our sevens, then you take the Lions.
Lions, yeah. I can see. Yeah, I mean, I do worry about 30 plus players being 40 squad being holed up in rugby players being holed up in a hotel for 2 weeks and not having anybody sent home because they've had a maid in their room for longer than they should do. Ian's got to get a comfy seat.
I was going to say he's going like all. You remember in the Dark Knight when the Joker is like video to cam and he's like all being right now.
We're getting a tour of Ian's house at the minute, so I hope he's not taking us to the toilet. Anyway,
not this time, no.
He's just gone to the fridge. So, I think we've got.
Just in case I miss anything.
That's fine. I think that in terms of where Scotland are at the minute, then, John, I think you got. Even after the weekend, I'm still reasonably confident of a decent showing for the Lions. You probably get Chris Harris, I think, for one, had an absolutely stormer of a game in attack and defence.
Yep.
You're probably looking at Doohan on the plane, Finn Russell, Ali Price. You could, the Mish, Johnny Gray. I mean, even Scott Cummins is an outside bet. There's quite a few names you could name and think that, we at this stage we should expect to have a few names.
Yeah, I think looking across, particularly when you start to compare to the other nations, there is quite a few like very, very heavy potentials now. Even thinking about guys like, obviously get sent off, but even thinking about Zander, compared to the other options at prop, I think he does offer something. You're absolutely right. The second rows, Johnny Gray should be piloting the plane at this rate. Cummings another option. The Mish should be there. Bolter, Matt Fagerson might even be a bit of a bolter. Again, you would maybe, the only concern you would have there is maybe the way Gatlin wants to play. I've said before, Fagerson's kind of that halfway point between your kind of flair 8 and your brute 8, and Gatlin very much favours the brute. So maybe not. Price. All the scrum halves are rubbish just now, so Price has got an option. I think I was saying on the Rock and Roll podcast, for me, Ali Price is playing really well at the minute. I know he maybe made the wrong choice towards the end of the game, but I think he's as good as Antoine Dupont. The reason why Antoine Dupont is getting all that, Ian looks shocked here and he's going to come at me, but there's a reason for this. I think the reason why Antoine Dupont looks so good is because he does the YouTube highlight breaks and offloads. But I don't think Ali Price is being asked to play that game by Gregor Townsend. He had a couple of snipes at the weekend, but I don't think that's what he's being asked to do. And what he's been asked to do is deliver the ball cleanly from the base of the ruck and kick. Ian, you look like you're about to disagree with me and say that I'm mad.
Well, no, Ali Price, I'm a fan, especially when he broke through at Glasgow Warriors. He started off as fourth choice scrum half. Then he was just this whirling dervish who was capable of playing a high pace game and also game management, but very, very quickly learned to do it. Dupont is I don't even think we can give the excuse that, all right, fair enough, he's playing behind a better pack than us. But he just has such a different variation in his game. He can do the little chip kicks. We've seen Ali Price do that as well, but Dupont's more likely to do that. I think he's more capable of finding. He's a better sniper, and not only that, he's a better offloader. Price is excellent. I'm not slating it, especially after his little. Well, the horror show at the Millennium Stadium, which took him quite some time to recover from, because he was pretty poor for Glasgow for a while as well. But now he seems to be back in, back into near top form, and he is a little bit slower than he used to be, or just more composed, shall we say?
Yeah.
But Dupont is the best in the world. He's the best scrum half in the world. Even Aaron Smith's been saying it.
Yeah.
Of the Lions options, I'd say Price. There's no reason why Ali Price could not make the Lions. Conor Murray is past it as far as I'm concerned. Ben Young's never really had it as far as I'm concerned.
He's played of the tournament last year, was he not?
Why? He does, but it's easy for him because he's got a beast of a pack. When the pack's not working, he's not working. Never seen the big thing with Youngs. Again, he's also too old. Wales don't seem to know who their first choice scrum half is. Is it Thomas Williams? Probably should be Thomas Williams. Gareth Davies is pretty good, and also they just flat out refused to pick Rhys Webb, even though he came back to Wales. Just the other options like Ireland's James Gibson Park. I don't see it. Why the hell is Cooney not playing? So yeah, I think Price is definite chance to be on the plane, but to compare him to say he could be better than Dupont is, I think that you're on absolute bobbins there. Cammy.
All right, okay, that's fine. Martin Bell says Chris Harris, Lions, bolter, discuss. I don't think he's even a bolter. I think he's just. No. I think he's probably nailed on at the minute. I would say he's probably one of the best play form wise. Is probably the most all round 13 of the nations.
He's like a JD2. I call it. If we're talking about Gatland, he is very much like JD2 because his specialty is defence. And we've seen him like club level, especially have a couple of good runs. And against Wales, I thought it's what he's probably his best attacking game. And I've talked for ages now, so John, please stop me.
I suppose I better then. No, I think Harris has a massive shot at getting on the plane, and I think it ultimately will come down to whether that very man you've just mentioned, JD2, is able to get fit. And if he's able to get fit and show any sort of game time, I think he'll go instead of Harris purely as a Gatlin pick. Now, I don't know the situation with Jonathan Davis at the moment. I know he is injured, but I don't know how long he's out for. But I certainly I could say that I think Harris probably should be picked, and you're absolutely right. He's a right fit for a Gatlin style game.
The last shout from Martin Bell was kind of amazing to hear chat of George Turner being a potential Lion, but if you look at how he's playing compared to the other hookers that are up there, that it's not a mad shout. He didn't, like you said, Johnny, he didn't have the greatest line out game this weekend, but around the park, you can't really fault him for his playing loose, and the scrum was fine.
He was probably closer, to what his line out averages usually are, which was the concern we all had coming into the tournament. But he gave everything around the park again. What we lose in set piece, you make up for 100 times over with his work around the park. You compare him to someone, the guy I always look at, compare him to Jamie George, for example, who just doesn't look. I mean, he looks like an English hooker in that he is huge, hits his set piece well, but doesn't do much. Stop snickering.
He's thinking about I think Ian's thinking about what the Munster physio called him.
No. I was going to say he looks like a Blues brother.
Fair enough.
He's like John Belushi in a rugby shirt.
Anywho, you compare the way that George Turner gets about the park to someone like Jamie George, and it's night and day. And I think Jamie George will probably be one of the first picks for that shirt, and I don't understand it because he is clearly not in any shape to be playing rugby just now. And with that in mind, I think maybe Turner does have a shout. Shot.
The last one before we move on to hands in there, we've got Dougie Lowe says Hog for Lions captain, and a few people have been talking about this just because I think he's the kind of captain, the nation captain that's probably the most informed in their position at the minute. I think Gatland will go with the forwards for to play South Africa personally. I think we saw at the weekend with Matt Carley insisting on speaking to Stuart Hogg for every decision. You can't have a fullback at captain in those circumstances. It's fine when you've got a referee who's willing to say, okay, I'll speak to the vice captain so that you don't have to run the entire length of the pitch to tell me what your decision is. But Matt Carley clearly was going to insist all game on speaking to Stuart Hogg for any decision and expose the stupidness of having a fullback as captain. Sorry, Johnny McGinty, I know that's going to upset you. But there was a point where Finn Russell was telling him to hurry up because Finn Russell wanted to call for the kick at the post, I think, and Matt Carley wouldn't let him do it until Stuart Hogg had confirmed. Yeah,
Finn pointed and said, and he kept going, "No, what's the decision?" And Finn's like, "I'm going for the posts."
No, I want the captain.
And Hogg had to come all the way over to go, yeah, posts.
Whereas other referees have been fine with just letting whoever the vice captain is make the call when Stuart Hogg's not close. Yeah,
that's just Matt Carley being a bit of a.
You can't discount the fact that a referee's going to do that and be a bit awkward just to kind of make it all about them.
But in which case, I was a captain, I would take, especially if you're on a winning if you're in a winning position, you would just take as long as possible to walk up, wouldn't you?
You would do. I think the flip side of it comes back to my view that I've got no problem at all with Stuart Hogg being captain, but I think you need a match captain,
a spokesperson.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
If he's going to insist on speaking to whoever's named captain, you say, well, that's fine. Stuart Hogg's the captain of the squad. He's the guy that actually ultimately makes the buck stops with him. He's in charge of the squad. But the match captain on the day, the guy is going to speak to the referee, and that's all his job is going to be.
You speak to Jamie Ritchie, or you speak to Johnny Gray will talk to you.
Yeah.
To be made for thinking about it, I don't know, I seem to be in some sort of let's modernise the game a wee bit. Is there an argument to be made for, because obviously, backs and forwards, their roles are quite different sometimes, and to speak to Stuart Hogg about the potential infringements at a scrum, or saying to Stuart Hogg, the next man to bring down a maul goes, and things. Well, that's pretty clear, but the technicalities of it it's impossible to get that across to a person who stands at the back of the field and has no idea whatsoever what's going on in the middle of those things. Is there an argument to be made that teams should be able to name a forwards and backs captain?
I don't think so, because if you listen to what referees do, they're generally more than happy to have conversations with the forwards during it and tell them what they're seeing. Man, I've seen Hamish Watson walk off the pitch having a chat to a referee at half time, obviously just asking for his interpretation of what he's doing. And if there is constant infringements, then all the referee does is says, there's too many infringements, go and have a word, and then ushers them away. And you see someone walking past, you see the captain then walking past, shrugging at everybody, just kind of saying, don't do it again. I don't know what he wants to do words from us, but don't do it again. So all they get told is go and have a word, stop infringing. That's the message. It's never that technical, the advice they give. So, yeah.
So we then have to ask, why was Richie Vernon never Scotland captain?
Well, there you go.
Well, you know my views on this, Iain. Richie Vernon should have been a lot of things.
Right, let's move on. We're getting up to the hour and a half mark, so let's move on and do this. Yeah, Hands in the Ruck time. It's our Any Other Business section of the podcast. My Hands in the Ruck is BT, who will not upgrade me, even though I'm entitled to a faster broadband connection. Which is why we're going a bit glitchy tonight.
I mean, you could have some serious words. We're a Scottish rugby podcast here, and we are trying our best to put our best foot forward for Scottish rugby. And BT, you sponsor them. Come on.
I can't do that with 10 megabits per second upload speeds.
Sort it. Other broadband providers are available.
Yeah, John, what's had its hands in your ruck?
Just the general fallout from the weekend. The general so some of you may well know I have taken a back step from a certain well-populated rugby forum on Facebook. Took a bit of a step away from it, and for my sins,
You left this idiot in charge.
left the for my sins, yes. No, I took a step away, and I dipped my toe in at the weekend just to sample the kind of general mood of Scottish rugby fans. And it was like I'd never been away. They continue to... we're just so moany. Like, I know I'm moaning about being moany, but why? We've got professional sport on. We've got a cracking test match. Yes, we've lost it by a point. There's been decisions against us. Yeah. We should have won the game, blah, blah, blah. Why are people so, incredulous about this? It is just a game. Chill. It's fine.
I think the main thing for me was that seeing people still tagging players.
Yes.
People sending messages to Zander Fagerson and then complaining that they're blocked. It's like, Christ, I don't mind people, tweeting and mentioning a player's name. That's just fair criticism. It's that's what social media is there for, to have a chat with your mates about what's happened. And we're not in pubs at the minute, so we can't have those discussions. So it's fine to be critical of a player on social media, but you don't directly target that at them by tagging them in it and directing it directly at them. So that was upsetting, particularly from one quite prominent kind of Twitter account started doing it as well over the weekend, which was kind of, I ended up blocking them because I thought, I'm not.
We're in such a privileged position in rugby that we still have quite a close relationship with the players. All three of us have been involved in situations where we've met players, we've spoken directly to players. You're able to interact with players online quite easily, unlike football. And it's things like that are just going to move us closer to that situation where we're not going to have access to players because they're going to have social media accounts managed. Because do you know what? Zander Fagerson knows fine well, having just been sent off in an international rugby match, he knows that that's a bit disappointing. He doesn't need thousands of armchair supporters standing up and tagging him on Twitter. It's nonsense. So all that does is, we've talked about mental health on here. We're in Hands in the Ruck. We don't need a klaxon. Yay! Walk down. We've spoken about mental health on here so much. So much of what's happening out there just now is so difficult for everyone, and adding to that with tagging people in criticism is just utterly ridiculous, and people should take a look at themselves.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair comment. Iain, what's had its hands in your ruck before I move to some from our super secret Facebook group?
Okay, so Hands in my ruck is, again, unfortunately, it's surrounding the Zander Fagerson incident, but it's more about how people respond to some of the queries about it. So I've seen quite frequently people going, right, hang on, as we've done, discussing it, saying, should it be a red card? Should it have been a red card? But what really grinds my gears is when people, if the question goes out posed as such, people are going to go, well, the referee said it was a red card, so it's a red card. It's like, respect the referee. Right, fine. We do respect the referees, but doesn't mean you're not allowed to question it. And particularly if the question is posed as, should it have been a red card? And well, the referee said so, that's the way it is. Doesn't mean people can be wrong. As I've already slanderously made allegations to about people doing the wrong thing in their jobs. No, that wasn't slander, because we know that Harvard will murder people. Right? Don't you're avoid if you people come in and say that, think it's like some kind of mic drop moment. No, it's not. What you're doing is you're failing to engage the question. You are sitting there like that smug kind of, well, this is the rugby ways kind of guy, right? quit it. Offer your opinion. Because someone says, I don't think it was, then you say why it was, and you confirm that. You look at the rules. I've got the disciplinary framework here about mitigation. I've got it on a tab sitting in front of me. We all know the rules and regulations. Are these people who are giving it all the rugby laws chat, they're the ones who have never complained about a single refereeing decision? Are they honestly trying to tell us that?
I think the other thing as well, that when you dig underneath, and there's been a lot of this today, is that a lot of them have never read the laws. And even I'm not saying I don't know them off the top of my head, and I think anybody who claims to, even referees, are probably a mad or a liar. But it's interesting sometimes to go and visit them and just kind of remind yourself of exactly what they do say in certain circumstances, and you have a much better discussion when you're open-minded. I mean, I went into it going, actually, I think, I thought yesterday, I was thinking, I think two weeks is the low entry. And I said, oh, maybe they'll get low entry, until somebody said, actually, head contact's always mid-entry, and I hadn't realised that. And, you go off and you really go, actually, no, it is. And, we get things wrong. We learn. Rugby's not an easy sport in terms of its laws, and they change so often. It's quite hard to actually track down a lot of the time. The most up to, the World Rugby have published the laws, but the disciplinary stuff that sits underneath that, it's actually quite hard to find that. So like you said, Iain, someone come along and going, that's just the law, and that's the way the referees read it. They're not engaging in the discourse, and actually probably they wouldn't really understand it anyway. I think conversely, the other thing that annoys me is people who just go, that was never a red. That was a yellow all day long. And it's like, well, why? Why do you think that? Go on, let's have a discussion about it. What is the bit in the law you're going to point to now that says why that the referee should have done it, other than the TMO saying that there might be mitigation here. That's actually to dig below that and say, well, why is it that you think the referee got it wrong?
I think there's also the sort of follow-on point from that, and I know Alan McDonald touched on it earlier on, but see if you're sitting there, right, so we're all, as Scotland fans, we're all wanting Scotland to do well, and we have our club sides and we want them to do well as well. And yeah, we can sometimes be a bit one-sided when we want decisions to go our way. But see if you're genuinely sitting there, and if you're able to put yourself outside that and say, do you know what, right, Zander Fagerson gets sent off, right? If that was Ellis Genge against Scotland, how many of us would genuinely be sitting there saying that's not a red card? If it was Ty Furlong in Ireland, 100% you would be sitting there going, that's a red card. That's got to be red. He's got to go. Iain, you are maybe a breed of rugby fan who is much more clever than the vast majority of us in this instance, but you would be calling for red.
I was doing that watch along with a couple of Welsh guys, right? So it was me, Brandon Smith, I can't remember the other boy's name off the top of my head, and Joe Shepherd from Three Balls of Bod. And we were watching that, and it's only Joe that said he's like, it's got to be a red. I'm like, it's borderline. I admitted, obviously I'm biased. I was like, I'd say it's a yellow because he's only just clipped his chin. It's only just because of the movement at the end. The two Welsh guys didn't think it was a red. They said that's a yellow.
I think this is and this is the thing. If you have a conversation during a match, or even before or after a match with other fans, most of the discussion is like that. It is much more balanced and more nuanced. Why, actually, I can understand why you would think that. It's the kind of, like you said, John, it's the overreaction at the end of a game and the entrenched positioning. We were robbed, and it's ridiculous, and the team are absolutely shocking. Most reasonable conversations that actually take place are more along the one that, and I watched the bit back, Iain, because I was, that bit where you were talking about the card, and so I caught that bit, and that reminds me of the discussions I will have down the pub with my mates if I'm watching England-Scotland. It's much more reasonable. You have the bit of teasing them back and forth, but it's much more reasoned discussion than it's screaming at each other saying, it was red, it was never red, it was yellow, it was never yellow. That's not, like Johnson, is not productive. It's not really a way to have a conversation about anything, is it?
So, one of the things I think John might have been referring to on the old Scottish Rugby Forum, there was somebody who posted Zander Fagerson should never play for Scotland again because of that. Right, now, remember Stuart Hogg getting sent off a few years, was it 2013 or 14?
14, yeah.
Yeah, against Wales, right? So imagine Stuart Hogg never played for Scotland again. Right. I mean, it's nonsense. I mean, to say just because somebody's had a wee rush of blood to the head, it's not like he's like ground and pound, like jumped on his chest and ground and pounded him and made a completely brought Scottish rugby out of disrepute. It was a slight aberration of judgment. We felt that he's going to feel it now by missing the next 4 games. But to say he should never play for Scotland again, for a 22-year-old man to make a mistake on our pitch, grow up. The person that posted that is obviously a lot older, or at least looks older. Man.
There's people with the Stuart Hogg one that were saying that, though. That's the thing. We are 6-7 years down the line, and fans still think it's acceptable to call out these mistakes and say, do you know what, that man should never represent his country again. Stuart Hogg, in that instance, made an absolute error of judgment, and we talked about off-field mitigation previously, and I was going to make the point earlier on. In any other occupation, if you're in a disciplinary proceeding, off-field, off-site mitigation would come into it. So it should definitely be part of our reasoning, even though I hate Peter Mahoney with a passion and want him to be banned forever. It should come into it. And fans saying stuff like that is just, it's just brain.
I wonder, and this isn't me being ageist, but I wonder if there is a certain age profile of people who have, because I think that there was a period a few years ago where everybody was at it. Everyone was tagging players into abuse, and nobody really kind of understood the full implications of social media use. So I think that there is a generation that's gone through those early days of social media and understood how things work and how to behave. I think there's an older generation who've come to social media much later who, will express opinions without necessarily kind of realizing that humor doesn't really come through, that you have to have a different you have to put humor in a different term to the way you would do it to somebody sat next to you, because the tone of voice doesn't come across, that you can't say the extreme things that you would say to somebody next to you in your front room watching it with you. Because saying, you should never play for Scotland again might be something you would say out loud at the end of a game when you're feeling frustrated, but it shouldn't be something that you sit down and type out, spend the time typing out on the internet. So I do wonder whether or not there's an age profile now to this kind of stuff, that it's just that an older generation of people that haven't gone through the initial, this isn't how things work on social media, and it's just something we need to get through by banning people and taking their computers away.
I think in particular, like when you see abuse being sent to players, if you're going to separate between older generations and younger generations, you're going to see a massive difference in the way they spell stuff. Because the older generation is going to be much more graphic and spelt properly. The younger ones, you'll probably need to know young people hieroglyphics.
Young people chat.
Yeah, I was like, what does this emoji mean? Why is there an aubergine and a splash of water? What's this trying to suggest?
All the emojis you can pick, Iain, hey.
This guy's calling me an aubergine splash of water. What's that mean?
A biscuit after it.
Well, that's what Joe Marler says to...
That's what he says to me. I've got a T-shirt with that on the back now.
And you didn't even tackle?
Exactly. Ryan Wally says, Twitter can be a huge cesspit when incidents like this happen. It just gets worse, and it does.
Actually, Ryan's profile image there.
It's
Where's
Halahola?
Oh, I thought it was... sorry, didn't see because it was further away. Because we've been talking about Tulupi Faletau, and you said that... what was it, John, that said Gatlin prefers a bruising number 8? Faletau's not a bruiser. Faletau's a bit slick. I love Faletau.
Alan McDonald says from the forum, ignorance is not an age-related image. And then Ryan's apologised for the image of Willis Halaholo. I did. You know, I think if anything, what we did is we stuck one to the Welsh racists by letting Wales win at the weekend and making Willis Halaholo look good. That's all we do. It's public service for Wales
and the anti-Wayne Pivac crowd.
Yeah, that's all we did. We were we're playing the long game. We're trying to make you stick with Wayne Pivac when you really shouldn't.
Woke Scotland.
And that's a beautiful positive to end on, Cam, surely.
Well, I've got my hands in the ruck, and then we've got a nice positive. I've got a positive one I've chosen. Everyone's hands in the ruck on the wee super secret social media group we've got was the red card and variations on the red card, and we've covered most of them tonight already. But mine was Hamish Watson, not him specifically, but more the backlash to him saying that he disagreed with the red card. And, you know, he spoke very passionately about it. He said, that's not rugby. And I don't agree with anything he said. I'll be very clear. He said, that's not rugby. We've gathered round Zander and it shouldn't have been a red card. And I don't know what's going on. And, you know, there were people, Welsh people, I should point out, mainly calling for him to be banned from rugby for saying that. And people saying, he shouldn't have spoken out like that. And I think if it's a dangerous road to go down, right? Because if we start picking players up on things they say in a moment of passion after the game, then all we're going to get is the same bland, old, tired, the boys done good, and we'll learn from this. And it's, you know, you might as well just get the SRU to stick out a press release with a pre-prepared quote from Gregor Townsend at the end of the game and not even bother sending people to cover it.
That's what we get. It's just all the same. All we'll learn from this.
It's the reason we don't feature player interviews on this podcast. If I'm honest, we could pursue them if we wanted to, and we could try and get them, but I don't think we get anything different out of them that you would hear in 100 other different media outlets. I think the players relax a little bit when they're being interviewed by their friends, so there's plenty of podcasts that can provide you that. I think what we would get is the same old media lines, and it doesn't really add anything.
If not even less.
So it's a, you know, obviously we get the opportunity to interview someone like Dan Leo and other people. It's a bit different, but, you know, players, it's just, and I think that's the thing, you know, it's great to see somebody like Hamish Watson speaking passionately after a game, even what he said was wrong, and he's since retracted it. But we can't start kind of condemning people for it. It's just, you know.
The fact he then sort of owned up to it and went, you know what, that was said in the heat of the moment. I'm sorry, that wasn't cool. That's
fair play, but I don't even see the point. I don't even see why he should have to, you know, so quickly. He's obviously been told to put that tweet out apologising, but he said player safety is very important. And I was like, but we all knew you were speaking in the heat of the moment. It's a massive overreaction.
That isn't it? I think it does show the kind of the precarious nature of the social media age that we're in, and you know, you could relate it back to the will we call it Kneegate? I think Kneegate's fine. You know, he's had to put that tweet out purely because the SRU don't want to be implicated in any situation whereby, you know, it's brand management essentially. It's like we need to be seen to be supporting player welfare at all levels because that's the current vogue, that's the current, you know, message, and rightly so. Anything that goes against that, we can't be possibly seen to have it. And right, as you say, that then takes us into a place where you're just going to get bland, stage managed, press managed nonsense coming out all the time, when actually, again, we're in a privileged position to have individuals who are real people who give their real emotions. And that's what's interesting. That's what brings fans in. It's not the press managed nonsense. We don't want to hear that necessarily.
Yeah.
See, I don't know. See, I think that Watson's apology was honest, whereas, like, you look at, say, when Keith Earls apologised to Fraser Brown for dropping him and then talking crap about him, that was so stage managed. That was like, this is just someone going, here, read that, you little sad. And say something else. Whereas Watson was like, man, like, sorry. And he released it through Twitter. It wasn't through the.
No, it wasn't. That's fair enough.
It was personally done through his own Twitter account. So yeah, I'm going to let that slide, and I'm just now waiting for World Rugby to pull him up and give him a 2-week ban.
Yeah.
Say story enough.
I'm going to end on a positive though. So Shona Milligan on our super secret social media group that you can join if you sign up to our Patreon says her hands in the ruck. I've really enjoyed the articles on the blog by Chris Murray. Even after the very worst games, I've always managed to find a tiny shred of light somewhere. After Saturday, that wasn't quite as difficult as it's sometimes been. At least now I know it's not just me. So yeah, Chris has done a very good article after the Wales game, and if you read it, there's a lot of kind of balance in there. I should also just say a quick shout out to Johnny Ball, who has signed up for the £5 Patreon. So thank you very much, Johnny. Welcome to the Dougie Donnelly Members Lounge. You're very welcome. If you pay £5 or more, you will get your name read out on the podcast as well. So thank you very much to Johnny. That's it from us for this week. We are, for Patreons, we're going to do Scotland's Hardest Player next week. We will do a very brief kind of half an hour on news and a bit of a France preview, probably Tuesday, Wednesday next week. And then we'll do are we kind of Patreons only Finn's podcast that we do after the team announcements, probably on Friday. So we'll do that. So yes, in the meantime, that's goodbye from me and goodbye from John and Iain.
Night, folks.
Ciao.